Before continuing, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and stay until the end because the details coming now are almost never explained in this way. Samson, the man who possessed the strength of God. In the valley of Sorek, a barren woman observes the horizon. For 40 years the Philistines have dominated Israel, not only militarily but culturally. The oppression comes not only by the sword, but by the constant humiliation that corrodes the soul of the people. In the city of Zorah, territory of the tribe of Dan, in the mountains of the Shephelah, a figure emerges, walking among the vines. The wife of Manoah, who had never managed to bear children, stops before the supernatural apparition. The angel of the Lord does not come as a distant vision, but as a physical presence that completely alters her reality. The conversation is direct and factual. The angel announces that she will conceive a son separated from the womb, a Nazirite. He shall not drink fermented wine, shall not touch the dead, shall never have his hair cut. That boy will not be a king, nor a traditional prophet in the common sense. He will be a living weapon, raised by God to begin the deliverance of Israel from the Philistines. The woman knows that this is not a vague promise, but a decree that will change the destiny of the nation. When Manoah returns from the fields, his wife relates the encounter. The man, knowing the sterility that has afflicted them for years, asks for divine confirmation. The angel appears again, repeating the instructions regarding the Nazirite vow that will mark the child's life since before birth. There is no doubt about the supernatural origin of this mission. What will be revealed later will completely change the understanding of what divine strength manifested through human weakness means. Months later, Samson is born. The name in Hebrew, Shimshon, echoes the strength of the sun. From the early years, something different marks his existence. It is not the common growth of a child, but development marked by inexplicable manifestations of physical power. Wood that other men can barely move, he lifts without effort. Stones that would require several people to be transported, he carries alone. The Spirit of God operates through him visibly, but without this translating into proportional spiritual maturity. In the vineyards of Zorah, Samson grows amidst constant tension. The Philistines control the trade routes, impose heavy tributes, and publicly humiliate any Israelite resistance. Their technological superiority in metallurgy, especially in working with iron, keeps Israel in permanent military disadvantage. The Israelites must resort to Philistine smiths, even to sharpen agricultural instruments. This technical dependence reinforces the psychological submission that penetrates all layers of society. But young Samson demonstrates no interest in leading armies or summoning national repentance. His extraordinary strength manifests in isolated acts, impulsive decisions, personal conflicts. He does not organize resistance, does not build tribal alliances, does not establish military strategies. His history advances through dramatic episodes where divine power erupts through his hands, but always connected to situations created by his own questionable choices. Upon reaching adulthood, Samson goes down to Timnah, a Philistine city located in the valley of Sorek. The region, dominated completely by the Philistines since their arrival as sea peoples 3 centuries prior, represents the heart of enemy power. Timnah lies a few kilometers from Zorah, but symbolizes completely different worlds. While Israel lives under oppression, in the Philistine cities economic prosperity, technological advancement, and military security prevail. In Timnah, Samson finds a Philistine woman and immediately decides to marry her. The decision provokes revolt in his parents. Manoah and his wife understand that this choice violates fundamental principles of the covenant with God. The Israelites must maintain separation from pagan peoples, especially through marriage. But Samson insists, moved by attraction that surpasses spiritual or strategic considerations. His parents, recognizing the impossibility of dissuading him, agree to accompany him to formalize the marriage. During one of the journeys to settle matrimonial details, Samson walks alone through the vineyards near Timnah. Suddenly, a roaring lion emerges among the vines. It is not a casual encounter, but a confrontation that will publicly test his supernatural strength for the first time. The animal, clearly adult and aggressive, advances with lethal intent. Samson does not flee, does not seek a weapon, does not call for help. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon him with overwhelming intensity. What happens next defies natural explanation. Samson seizes the lion with his bare hands and tears it apart as if it were a young goat. The force applied completely surpasses normal human capacity. Bones snap, muscles separate. The animal is literally destroyed by the pressure of Samson's fingers. The initial roar turns into absolute silence. The body of the predator lies divided in the middle of the path, impossible testimony of divine power manifested through a mortal man. But Samson does not tell his parents what occurred. This omission reveals a crucial aspect of his personality. He does not seek glory for the extraordinary feat, does not use the event to demonstrate a divine calling, does not transform the victory into a symbol of national resistance. The miracle remains secret, known only to him and to God. This tendency towards silence regarding supernatural manifestations will repeat itself throughout his life, suggesting a complex relationship with the power he carries. Days later, returning by the same path, Samson finds something surprising. In the carcass of the lion, a swarm of bees has built combs and produced honey. The image is biologically possible but symbolically charged. From what was a source of death and terror emerges sweetness and sustenance. Samson eats of the honey and takes part of it to his parents, without revealing the origin. By doing so, he technically breaks the Nazirite vow that prohibits contact with the dead, but demonstrates no repentance or concern with the violation. The marriage takes place in Timnah with typical Philistine celebration. During the banquet that lasts 7 days, Samson proposes a riddle to the 30 young Philistines present. The wager involves 30 linen garments and 30 changes of festal clothing. If they decipher the riddle, Samson will pay. If they cannot, they will pay. The riddle is based directly on the experience with the lion. Out of the eater came forth meat, and out of the strong came forth sweetness. The formulation is impossible to solve without knowledge of the specific event. For 3 days, the Philistines attempt to discover the answer without success. Frustration grows until it becomes a real threat. On the 4th day, they seek Samson's wife and pressure her violently. Either she discovers the secret of the riddle, or her family will be burned alive. The woman, terrified, seeks Samson with tears and emotional pleas. She insists that if he truly loves her, he must trust her with the answer. The psychological pressure intensifies by the hour. Samson resists for 3 days, but finally yields. He reveals that the riddle is based on the lion he killed and the honey found in the carcass. The woman immediately transmits the information to the Philistines. On the 7th, day before the sun goes down, they present the correct solution. Samson instantly perceives the betrayal. His response is direct and charged with bitterness. If they had not plowed with his heifer, they would not have discovered his riddle. The animal metaphor reveals not only knowledge of the conspiracy, but deep contempt for the manipulation suffered. At that moment, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson again, but now channeled through fury. He departs immediately for Ashkelon, one of the 5 principal cities of the Philistine Confederation, located on the Mediterranean coast. Ashkelon is an important military and commercial center, well defended and prosperous. The choice is not accidental. Samson will not attack easy or isolated targets, but will enter the heart of Philistine power to fulfill his wager. In Ashkelon, Samson kills 30 men and takes their garments to pay the debt of the riddle. The homicides are not random or criminal in the common sense, but acts of individual war against oppressors. Each death represents a blow to Philistine pride and sense of security. An Israelite alone penetrated one of their most protected cities, eliminated 30 citizens, and departed without being detained. The psychological impact largely surpasses the number of dead. After paying the wager, Samson abandons the wife and returns to his paternal home. The fury has not yet completely dissipated, but the immediate action of vengeance brought temporary satisfaction. He seeks neither reconciliation nor explanation. The marriage came to an end through betrayal, and Samson simply ends it. This capacity for definitive rupture will become a pattern in his personal relations, reflecting both strength of character and incapacity for forgiveness. During his absence, significant events occur in Timnah. The father of the bride, interpreting the abandonment as a definitive divorce, gives the daughter to Samson's companion. The decision follows local customs, but completely ignores the specific nature of the relationship. Samson did not formally divorce the woman, only withdrew temporarily. When he returns months later, expecting to resume the marriage, he discovers the change consummated. The father-in-law attempts to mediate the situation by offering the wife's younger sister as a substitute. He argues that she is more beautiful and suitable. But Samson does not accept the arrangement. His connection was with the specific woman, not with a generic category of available wives. The refusal is final and charged with consequences. At that moment, Samson declares that this time he shall be innocent when he causes harm to the Philistines. The declaration is not an empty threat, but a promise of imminent devastation. The vengeance Samson plans largely surpasses the personal damage suffered. He captures 300 foxes and ties them tail to tail. Between each pair of tied tails, he fixes a torch. When the torches are lit and the foxes released, they run desperate through the Philistine fields, spreading fire through entire plantations. The method is simultaneously creative and destructive, demonstrating tactical intelligence beyond brute force. The result is economic devastation on a regional scale. Fields of wheat, vineyards, and olive groves are consumed by the flames. The loss affects not only Timnah, but the entire agricultural region that sustains the Philistine cities of the area. The attack strikes directly at the economic base of enemy power, forcing them to face famine and scarcity. It is economic warfare conducted by a man alone, but with efficacy comparable to an organized military campaign. The Philistine response is rapid and brutal, identifying Samson as responsible for the fires and discovering the motivation related to the marriage. They decide to punish both him and the ex-wife's family. They go up to Timnah and burn the woman and her father alive. The execution is public and demonstrative, intended to discourage future collaborations with Israelite enemies, but the effect is contrary to the intended one. Instead of intimidating Samson, the act inflames his fury beyond any previous measure. When Samson discovers the murder of the woman he loved, his reaction is immediate and devastating. He attacks those responsible and massacres them with a great slaughter. The biblical text uses a Hebrew expression indicating extreme violence, suggesting not only death, but complete physical destruction of the bodies. Samson is not content with the quick elimination of the guilty, but literally tears them apart, leaving a scene of carnage that shocks even the standards of violence of the era. After this bloody vengeance, Samson withdraws to the rock of Etam, a rocky formation in the mountainous region of the Shephelah. The location offers natural protection and a strategic defensive position. Caves and clefts in the rock provide shelter, while the height allows observation of enemy movements. It is an ideal position for individual guerrilla warfare, but also isolation that separates Samson from the rest of Israel. The Philistines, recognizing the escalation of the conflict, mobilize significant military forces and march against Judah. They establish camp in Ramath-Lehi and demand that Samson be delivered. The message is clear. As long as he remains free, the entire tribe of Judah will suffer consequences. The ultimatum forces a crucial decision upon the Israelite leaders. They must protect one of their own or submit once more to Philistine power. The choice reveals the deeper tragedy of the situation. 3,000 men of Judah go up to the rock of Etam to capture Samson. They do not come as liberators or allies, but as executors of the enemy's will. The people who should be benefited by Samson's supernatural strength prefer to sacrifice him to maintain a precarious peace with oppressors. It is a betrayal that goes beyond individual cowardice, representing collective spiritual bankruptcy. But what no one perceives yet is that the events are just beginning. Samson's isolation at the rock of Etam does not represent defeat, but preparation. The Spirit of the Lord that operates through him transcends human loyalties and political calculations. The strength that resides in his muscles does not depend on popular support or tribal approval. And when 3,000 men of Judah approach the rock to capture the one who should be their champion, they do not imagine they are about to witness a manifestation of divine power that will completely redefine the balance of forces in the region. At the rock of Etam, Samson observes the approach of the 3,000 men of Judah. The irony of the situation does not escape him. The people who should fight by his side now come to deliver him to the oppressors. When the leaders of Judah arrive at the base of the rock, their justification is direct and revealing. The Philistines rule over Israel, and Samson's resistance has only brought more suffering to all. The logic of submission completely overrides the logic of freedom. Samson does not resist capture. He allows them to bind him with 2 new ropes, but establishes a crucial condition. The men of Judah themselves must not kill him. This requirement reveals both pragmatism and principle. Samson knows that his death at the hands of compatriots would be absolute betrayal, while delivery to the Philistines still offers the possibility of supernatural escape. The men of Judah agree, relieved to avoid direct responsibility for the shedding of blood. The descent from the rock to Ramath-lehi turns into a humiliating procession. Samson walks bound in the midst of 3,000 Israelite soldiers who voluntarily conduct him to the enemy. The ropes that bind his arms are visible symbols of national capitulation. The man who should lead Israel in the war of liberation is treated like a common criminal. The scene perfectly illustrates the degree of psychological submission that the Philistines managed to impose upon the chosen people. When they arrive at Ramath-lehi, the Philistines receive Samson with shouts of victory and celebration. For them, the capture represents definitive triumph over Israelite resistance. The man who had killed 30 of their compatriots in Ashkelon, devastated their plantations, and massacred entire families in Timnah, is finally under their control. The soldiers approach with confidence, preparing to conduct the prisoner to their cities for exemplary public execution. At that exact moment, the Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson with overwhelming power. The new ropes that seemed secure begin to disintegrate as if they were dry fibers burned by fire. The carefully tightened knots come undone instantly. The bonds that held his arms fall to the ground like threads of flax. What seemed like the end turns into a new beginning. The manifestation is so sudden and dramatic that both Philistines and Israelites stand momentarily paralyzed. Free from the bonds, Samson searches quickly for a weapon. On the ground nearby, he finds the fresh jawbone of a donkey, a bone not yet dried by time. The choice may seem inadequate for military confrontation, but in Samson's hands, it transforms into an instrument of devastating destruction. The bone, though organic and apparently fragile, becomes more lethal than any sword forged by Philistine smiths. What follows is a massacre without precedent in the military history of the region. Samson advances alone against hundreds of armed and organized Philistine soldiers. The jawbone of the donkey in his hands strikes with superhuman force, shattering helms, piercing armor, breaking shields. Each movement generates multiple deaths. Philistine technological superiority becomes irrelevant before brute force multiplied supernaturally. The enemy soldiers attempt to surround him, attack him with spears and swords, overwhelm him by sheer number. But nothing works. Samson moves with speed and agility that defy physical explanation. The jawbone flies in his hands, creating deadly arcs that eliminate adversaries in groups. The bone does not break nor wear down, maintaining structural integrity impossible under such pressure. It is as if matter itself were transformed into divine substance. The battlefield transforms into an apocalyptic scene. Bodies of Philistine soldiers accumulate in piles around Samson. Blood completely soaks the soil of Ramath-lehi. Screams of pain and terror replace the chants of initial victory. The survivors flee in panic, abandoning weapons and equipment. The military force that had dominated Israel for decades disintegrates before a man armed only with the bone of an animal. When silence finally returns to Ramath-lehi, 1,000 Philistines lie dead. The number is not poetic exaggeration, but Historical reality documented demonstrating divine power operating through a human instrument. Samson remains standing in the center of the devastation, still holding the bloody jawbone. His body shows no signs of extreme fatigue that would be natural after such effort. The supernatural strength that sustained him during the battle continues flowing through his muscles. The victory of Ramath-Lehi marks a turning point in the history of the Philistines. For the first time since their arrival in Canaan 3 centuries prior, they suffer a devastating military defeat at the hands of a single enemy. The myth of their invincibility comes undone completely. News of the massacre spreads quickly through all 5 cities of the Philistine Confederation, generating fear and uncertainty regarding the continuity of their domination over Israel. But Samson does not capitalize on the victory militarily. He does not summon the Israelite tribes for a generalized uprising. He does not organize a campaign to expel the Philistines from the national territory. He does not assume political leadership or establish long-term strategies. Instead, he baptizes the place with a commemorative name, Ramath-Lehi, the hill of the jawbone, and simply returns home. The historical opportunity for national liberation is lost in the absence of adequate political vision. After Ramath-Lehi, Samson exercises the function of judge in Israel for 20 years. It is not a peaceful period, but one of tense equilibrium where his presence prevents direct Philistine attacks while not completely eliminating the threat. During these 2 decades, sporadic episodes demonstrate that his strength remains intact and his capacity for individual action continues being a determining factor in regional relations. One of these episodes occurs in Gaza, a coastal city and center of the Philistine Confederation. Samson enters the city and visits a prostitute, an act that combines satisfaction of physical desires with provocative political challenge. Gaza represents Philistine power in its most concentrated form, and Samson's presence there constitutes an intolerable affront. The leaders of the city decide to capture him during the night when he leaves the prostitute's house. The Philistine plan is technically solid. Gaza possesses high walls and gates reinforced with iron. Once Samson is inside the city at night, with the gates closed and guards positioned strategically, escape would become impossible for any normal man. Soldiers position themselves silently around the house where Samson is found, waiting for dawn to attack when he attempts to depart. But Samson awakens during the night and perceives the trap. Instead of attempting a furtive escape or armed confrontation, he chooses a response that completely surpasses enemy expectations. He walks directly to the city gates, seizes the 2 leaves of reinforced iron together with the posts and bars, and simply tears everything from the foundations. The combined weight of the gates and structures exceeds several tons, but Samson heaves them onto his shoulders. The walk from Gaza to the top of the hill near Hebron covers a distance exceeding 60 kilometers. Samson traverses the entire route carrying the city gates, a demonstration of physical endurance that accompanies the extraordinary brute force. The journey is performed during the night, avoiding immediate pursuit, but the result is visible to anyone who approaches the region at dawn. The psychological impact of the action largely surpasses its military importance. Gaza, the city that symbolized Philistine security, lies literally open, its main defenses removed by a man alone. The gates deposited on the hill near Hebron become a permanent monument to Philistine military impotence. Any traveler passing through the region can witness physical evidence of the supernatural strength acting through Samson. After these events, Samson falls in love with a woman named Delilah, who lives in the valley of Sorek. Unlike previous women in his life, Delilah does not appear as an impulsive romance or purely physical attraction. She represents a deeper and more lasting relationship, an emotional connection that Samson had not experienced before. The name Delilah, possibly related to delicacy or fragility, contrasts ironically with the role she will play in the destruction of the strongest man in history. The leaders of the Philistine Confederation, observing the development of this relationship, see a unique opportunity. They seek Delilah secretly and make her a proposition that combines veiled threat with extraordinary reward. Each of the 5 Philistine lords offers 1,100 pieces of silver for information regarding the source of Samson's strength. The total amount, 5,500 coins, represents a fortune sufficient to guarantee financial security for the rest of her life. Delilah accepts the bribe, but faces a considerable technical challenge. Samson is not a man who reveals secrets easily, especially those related to his supernatural power. She needs to develop a psychological strategy that induces him to share information as intimate as it is dangerous. The approach she chooses combines physical seduction with emotional manipulation, progressively testing the limits of Samson's trust. Delilah's first attempt is direct but superficial. She asks about the source of his strength and how he could be bound and dominated. Samson responds with an elaborate lie. If he were bound with 7 fresh bowstrings that had not been dried, he would lose his strength and become like any other man. Delilah obtains the strings, hides Philistine soldiers in the room, binds Samson while he sleeps, and then wakes him shouting that the Philistines are upon him. Samson awakens and snaps the strings as if they were threads. The lie is discovered immediately, but Samson's reaction is not fury or mistrust. He treats the episode as a joke, demonstrating confidence in Delilah that surpasses clear evidence of betrayal. This capacity to deny obvious signs of danger will become a pattern in his behavior, suggesting that his emotional involvement seriously compromises his discernment. Delilah feigns indignation at the lie and insists that Samson does not truly trust her. The second attempt involves new ropes that have never been used. Again, Samson provides false information. Again, Delilah tests with hidden soldiers. Again, he escapes easily. The pattern repeats itself for the third time, when Samson states that his strength would be lost if his hair were woven with the web and fastened with a pin. Delilah's persistence should alert any sensible man about her true intentions. 3 attempts at domination followed by escape reveal unequivocal conspiracy. But Samson not only remains in the relationship, he continues providing information that, although false, progressively approaches the truth. The mention of hair in the third attempt shows that he is walking dangerously toward complete revelation. Delilah's fourth attempt is preceded by an intense emotional campaign. She accuses Samson of not truly loving her, of considering her unworthy of trust, of keeping secrets that prevent genuine intimacy. The pressure is exercised daily, transforming every encounter into a confrontation regarding honesty and commitment. Delilah argues that true love requires absolute transparency, especially regarding questions as fundamental as the source of his identity as a man. The strategy works because it strikes a real vulnerability in Samson's personality. Despite extraordinary physical strength, he possesses a deep need for acceptance and love. The loneliness that marks his life, the result of his isolation because of supernatural gifts, makes him susceptible to emotional manipulation. When the woman he has fallen in love with questions the sincerity of his feelings, psychological resistance wears down rapidly. Finally, Samson reveals the complete truth. His strength is linked to the hair that has never been cut, the external symbol of the Nazirite vow made before his birth. If the hair is cut, the vow will be broken, the Spirit of the Lord will depart, and he will become weak like any other man. The confession is not partial or ambiguous, but a total revelation that delivers his life completely into Delilah's hands. Delilah's reaction is calculatedly normal. She demonstrates neither excessive excitement nor suspicious haste. Instead, she feigns accepting the information as proof of love and trust. Secretly, she sends a message to the Philistine lords, informing them that she has finally obtained the truth. They go up bringing the promised money, preparing for the definitive capture of the man who has terrorized their nation for 2 decades. When Samson falls asleep for the last time on Delilah's lap, he suspects nothing. The sleep is deep and trusting, the total relaxation of a man who believes he is safe in the arms of the woman he loves. Delilah calls a hidden man who carefully cuts all of Samson's hair. The locks that never knew a blade fall one by one, taking with them the power that defined his entire existence. Samson's awakening marks the end of an era. When Delilah shouts that the Philistines are upon him, Samson rises as he always did before, expecting his strength to respond to the command. But nothing happens. The muscles that once moved tons now barely sustain his own weight. Superhuman speed has reduced to common mobility. Extraordinary endurance has evaporated completely. For the first time in his adult life, Samson is just a man. The Philistines capture him easily, bind him with chains he cannot break, and proceed to the final humiliation. They gouge out his eyes with hot iron, eliminating not only his physical vision, but symbolically his capacity to perceive spiritual reality. The man who saw impossible possibilities now walks in permanent darkness. The blindness is more than physical punishment. It is the symbolic death of everything he represented. Samson is taken to Gaza, the city whose gates he had torn out years before, and put to work at the mill like a common slave. The irony of the situation is cruel and intentional. The man who carried the gates of an entire city now pushes a stone for grinding grain. The hands that tore lions apart and killed thousands now execute the repetitive task of a beast of burden. The humiliation is total and public, a constant demonstration of Philistine victory over the power of Israel. But in the silence of the prison, a fundamental change begins to occur. Samson's hair, cut and apparently dead, initiates slow and constant growth. Strand by strand, the external evidence of the Nazirite vow reconstitutes itself. More important than physical recovery, however, is the spiritual transformation happening in parallel. For the first time in his life, Samson prays with genuine humility, recognizing total dependence on God. During a festival dedicated to the god Dagon, the Philistines decide to exhibit Samson publicly as a trophy of war. 3,000 leaders and citizens gather in the main temple of Gaza, a massive structure supported by 2 central stone pillars. Samson is brought out to entertain the multitude, a humiliating spectacle demonstrating the definitive triumph of Dagon over the God of Israel. What they do not perceive is that the broken man before them is no longer the same one captured months before. Samson asks the young man guiding him to be positioned between the 2 main pillars, alleging the need for support. The request seems natural, considering his blindness and apparent weakness. But when his hands touch the pillars, Samson cries out to God for the last time. He asks not for glory nor personal vengeance. He asks only for the opportunity to fulfill the purpose for which he was separated since birth. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Samson one last time with power multiplied by years of absence. His hands close around the stone pillars with force that surpasses all previous manifestations. The muscles that seemed atrophied expand again with divine energy. The structure of the temple, built to last centuries, cannot resist the pressure applied by a man in final communion with his Creator. The pillars snap simultaneously. The massive roof of stone and wood collapses upon 3,000 Philistines gathered to celebrate victory over Israel. In a few seconds, the political and religious elite of the Philistine nation is crushed under tons of rubble. Samson dies together with his enemies, fulfilling finally and completely the mission for which he was raised. His death causes more damage to the Philistines than his entire life of individual confrontations. Samson's body is rescued by his brothers and buried between Zorah and Eshtaol in the tomb of Manoah, his father. The burial marks the end of a unique period in the history of Israel, an era in which a man alone kept the hope of liberation alive through supernatural strength. Samson did not complete the liberation of Israel from the Philistines, but initiated a process that would culminate decades later with the victories of Samuel and David. The story of Samson is not the account of a perfect hero, but a demonstration of how God uses flawed instruments to fulfill eternal purposes. A man of extraordinary strength and human weakness, of impossible victories and avoidable defeats, of divine calling and questionable choices. He proves that the power of God does not depend on the impeccable morality of the man, but that disobedience always exacts a price. Samson won impossible battles against external enemies, but lost the most important war against his own passions. And yet he was used until the end to begin the liberation of his people from the oppression that lasted 40 years.